to stay.
Hello and welcome back to Beyond Boards, a podcast dedicated to the actions and interests of skaters beyond skateboarding. My guest today, Sarah Anderson, was born and raised in Long Island, New York. Since 2013, aside from her busy schedule teaching English as a second language in New York City and raising 2 kids with her husband Tim Anderson, aka Bobshirt, Sarah has been running Deckaid, a volunteer-run 501c3 retrospective skateboard art exhibition that showcases collector archives and celebration of skateboarding's influential history. Their exhibits raise awareness and funds for youth-centered community organizations. In 2023 and 24, Deckaid partnered with the Krailtap Camp and helped put together the 30-year anniversary exhibitions of girl and chocolate skateboards. So here's my conversation with Sarah. I hope you'll enjoy it. First one.
Hey Sarah, do you think if you never met Tim and married Tim and got involved in all this skateboarding, super cool stuff, do you think you would have set up a show about rave memorabilia to, pants
Erik
and
Rosetti.
light sticks and hair ties and stuff instead of the Deckaid show?
He's such a jerk.
Did you hear the whole question?
Yeah, I did. That's okay. Erik. That's Erik. I was wondering if you would get to him. Yeah. No, Erik, I would. That's probably like maybe the most embarrassing decade of my life. Yeah. So I know Erik from growing up on Long Island.
Right. That's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't even remember exactly how we met. Back in the 90s.
How old were you when you two met? Were you teenagers or?
Tim and I? I guess the question is around Tim, right? I was talking about Erik. So Tim and I were in our 20s. Yeah, we met around maybe I was out of the country and I moved back in the end of 1999. So we must have met around 2000. So I would have been around 24, 25 at the time.
And what about Erik? When did you meet with him?
I must have been, I gotta say, 16, 17 years old.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's just like everyone on Long Island kind of found each other. In New York, Long Island's like this sort of suburban wasteland, outside of New York City. Yeah. So I've known him for quite a long time.
Yeah. That's where you grew up, right? In Long Island?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I heard that you met Gino through Erik. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yeah. So Erik is an old friend of Gino's. I think Erik might even be like the godfather of Gino's kids.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Growing up on Long Island in the 90s, like I was saying before, is, we didn't have social media. We didn't have YouTube. And, it was even hard to find like good music. You really had to like look for it. And I just feel like everyone, teenagers look for their tribes. And our tribe is fairly small compared to the rest of Long Island. So anyone was sort of listening to like alternative music and like skating, sort of like found each other. There was kind of like a corny teenage club on Long Island called The Angle, and people would find each other there. But sometimes you just find people like walking down the street, like I'd go hang out at skate parks with like mutual friends, like at the Belmore skate park. So I actually don't remember the first time I met Erik. But we did spend a lot of time together. I think when I was like 17, I think he's a couple years older than me, Erik, always older than me. Yeah, and we had, we hung out pretty tight for a little while. Unfortunately, I was in a rave stage apparently then. I had a lot of stages. But then we reconnected through skateboarding sort of years later after I had met Tim at a fundraiser for we had a friend whose son passed away, and there was a fundraiser for an organization they were starting. So we sort of reconnected then. And so I met... we stayed in touch, and then when we came up with the idea of doing Deckaid, when we decided to do the New York City show, which was not our prototype show, I had this idea. Tim had taken a picture of our son holding the Gino Jizza board like this in front of our record player. And I was like, it'd be really cool if we did that with a skateboarder, like if they held the graphic just like that. And we were like, well, let's start strong. Who could we start with? And I was like, well, Erik's best friends with Gino. Like, let me hit him up. And Gino was just amazing. Gino has said yes to everything we've asked.
To a lot of projects.
This whole time, just fully on board. Such a sweetheart.
Amazing. Yeah. That's sick. And I was wondering, like, talking about Erik and Gino and your youth, I was wondering, what was your first interaction with skateboarding? Like, were you, confronted with it through Erik, or did you try skating when you were a child? Or, like, what was your very first, interaction with skateboarding? Gosh,
I want to say, I don't know how I first saw it, but I was in elementary school. I want to say I was, like, in 5th or 6th grade. And I don't know, I can't quite remember how I came across it. It must have been through a friend. I had a cousin who skated, and I thought he was so cool. And his brother, like, BMX'd, and, like, they were super cool. And I was not super cool. And I was like, I'm going to start skating, too. And I remember my parents bought me, like, a Nash board, and it was, like, this kind of, like, crappy Toys R Us board. And I would skate around on that. But then I feel like my friend down the street had a Vision board.
Uh-huh.
And so I'd sort of, like, ditch the Nash board and, like, skate around on her Vision board because you could, like, it was easier to maneuver. And I lived near a beach, and I'd go down to the beach, and I practiced, like, tic-tacking and all this stuff. But I remember that same cousin, my cousin Jason, he used to stay with us in the summertime, and he came out, and he was watching me, and he just full on was like, stop. I stopped. He's like, yeah, you got to get off that. And I was like, okay. Because I looked up to him, and he would probably be mortified if he heard me say this. But I stopped then. Yeah, I stopped then. Being too, there's nowhere to see girls skateboarding for me at that time. Like it was just like this thing my friend and I were trying. But yeah, I guess, and then in high school, I'd meet skateboarders from Long Island, and then just sort of, you'd meet someone walking down the street, and you'd like what they were wearing, and you'd like start talking to them, because they were wearing like cool shoes or something, because nobody else was. And that's sort of how, in high school, I would say I started hanging out with more skateboarders.
Okay.
As friends, yeah.
But you never like got back to actually skating yourself, like that's not something you tried to pursue later? Yeah.
I tried after the skatepark project that I'm sure you've heard about. I tried, and I was like having fun kind of like in the transition of the spine ramp that we had built. I totally fell, and then I was not good. It was like, there's so much balance involved, and I get so much in my head, and I was like a woman, and I was like, this feels totally awkward, and I'd make sure I'd go down early. But I fell, and I ended up needing shoulder surgery, and I was like, don't tell anybody that the woman who advocated for the skate park hurt herself. You're always trying to say, people don't get hurt that bad, or not as much as other sports, and of course, I was the one who hurt myself, and I totally kept it on the DL. Like, people were like, how'd you hurt yourself? I was like, I can't even remember what I said.
Whatever.
I was like, I don't know. But yeah, so, I've always loved it, though. I've always loved watching it. I feel like, having been around it so much, you can almost, you can feel it, like, almost like you're doing it. Like, when you're watching someone skate really well, it looks so effortland then with the music going, I've always admired it.
Yeah. Well, me too, obviously, but and then I'll move to the next question. But I was also wondering, when you met Tim, how early did you realize how passionate he was about skateboarding, and what were your thoughts on his love of it and his passion for it? And which eventually, I guess, when you two met, he wasn't doing, what was it called, GuyMariano.com before it was Bobshirt. That might have come a bit later. But I'm sure he was skating. He was probably even making videos with his friends at the time.
Yeah.
And, what were your thoughts on his passion for skateboarding at that time?
I met him through another skateboarder, right? So I always knew that he was skating. And he sort of had like a different set of friends than my friends. Like I'm a few years older than him.
Okay.
Whether it's skating or something else, when you start to date someone, it's always nice when they have a passion that's theirs.
Yeah, sure.
So like I always appreciated it. I'd watch him like make his videos. He would stay up in those early days like all night making, the Boulevard 4 video. Yeah. Hours and hours. And then I used to be like talk to him about music because I was like, I always love music. I was like, you should try this song. I think I recommended a broadcast song. I feel like it was in Boulevard 4.
Okay.
I just always thought it was cool. Like he did his own thing, but he was really visual. I was always impressed with his editing skills, actually. I thought he was a good skater. I mean, I didn't hang out with him while he skated. Not till later in life. I didn't go out with his friends. Like I had my own friends. But I did watch him edit a lot. and he'd like show me what he was working on,
and you would suggest songs sometimes and that kind of stuff.
Here, just a little bit in the beginning, like, because you influence someone's music when you're with them. If you both love music, you'll influence that. But yeah. So I always appreciated it.
All right, let's move to this next one. This one is from Marc McKee. So he asked about something you mentioned earlier. He said, "Can you describe the entire process of getting the Nyack skatepark approved and built?" And I think that was either right before you started Deckaid or as you were starting it around that time, right?
Deckaid came out of that.
Yeah.
Marc is so great because, he's such a talented and humble, quiet person. But he gave a donation, one of our first donations towards the skate park. Sort of, and we hadn't met or anything. And I was like, oh, donation came through from Marc McKee, which I thought was super cool. Because we hadn't met him yet. Gosh, that project. So we had moved to Nyack, New York. There was some spots to skate, but Tim had a lot of his friends were still down in the city, and it just felt like it was a very artistic town, and it felt right for something like skateboarding. A town that would be open to it. The town I live in is not so much that way. And so it was sort of like, can I do this? What am I doing? Can I figure out how to put a little skate park into town? So I sort of went in blind. I did reach out to Steve Rodriguez, who was like, "Oh, you have to get this Tony Hawk Foundation guide. This is your Bible." And I'm a teacher and I'm a nerd, and I read a ton of books, and so I read that Peter Whitley guide, and it was my Bible, and I just basically followed every step that was in that book. You got to go concrete only. This is why. And it just started off with a petition. I had a baby at the time, and I just pushed the baby around, and people were like, "What is happening?" I was like, "Oh, I'm petitioning for a skate park," and they're like, "Some lady with a baby is this doesn't make any sense." And I had a toddler. What is this? Not it wasn't the face of what they were expecting. And we had this really vivacious, cool mayor. Her name was Jen White. Mm-hmm. And I was like, "Will you sit down with me and talk to me about this?" And she just loved fresh ideas. And like I said, Nyack is very artistic and interesting and open. And she's like, "Well, let's try to make it happen." And it was a long process. It was 5 years.
Oh, wow, yeah, okay.
And you don't know, if anyone tells you that in the beginning, I've told other people who are advocating, they're like, "Oh, how long is this going to take?" I was like, "At least 5 years." And they're like, "Well, we don't have that amount of time." I was like, "Well, you better buckle up, baby, because it's a lot, So it was learning by fire. I had to get the land, everything is a vote in town. And so you have to get them to get on board with the idea, right? Yeah. And you have to bring critical mass. So you have to get the community, on board. I started a Facebook page called Nyack Needs a Skate Park that helped get critical mass. Rockland County, New York is not a huge place, so people found it pretty quickly. And I did have a lot of people behind the idea, but they were like, this is never going to happen. And that's kind of how Deckaid came into play, because, we might talk later about how my discovering that Tim was hoarding skateboards when we moved in together. Mm-hmm. But by that point, he had amassed quite a collection, and it was in our basement. We had this finished wood panel basement, and there were all these skateboards in boxes. I feel like they were in boxes at the time. And I was like, these are just sitting here. They're amazing. So if I can get the land, then let's do an art show. Yeah. And he was like, he was kind of like, "Well, this isn't going to happen. So you never have to put me on the hook for this." Cause he was like, "Well, that's mortifying. I don't want to do that." And we got it, and then we did throw the first prototype of Deckaid. So that was one of our main fundraisers. I was really pitching to get the highest THF grant, Tony Hawk Foundation grant, which is $25,000. And I was like, I'm going to get this grant because we qualify economically as a community. It's a good idea. It's needed. I had the community center on board. I was like, by then I had evolved, and I was like, Second Nature Skate Shop was helping me. We arranged skateboarding lessons in the municipal parking lot, so people could see that people wanted to do it. Yeah. And so we worked with Tony Hawk Foundation, and we built a 5,000 square foot concrete park right on the Hudson River. Not huge, but very, very loved. And I still will get messages now and then from people being like, "I hope that this little skate park changed my son's life," or "This skate park is the most used feature in the community." But
is it still there today?
Oh yeah, it's still there. Yeah, it's still there. The thing that Marc, I think, he thought was most interesting, and I think Tony Hawk Foundation and Miki Vuckovich found it interesting, was that we Jerry Only from Misfits. He was involved in the area. He had a daughter in Nyack, and so someone's like, you should pitch to Terry Only to see if he'll do a Misfits show. And this is before he like reunited with Danzig and stuff. And I was like, okay, like, why not try, right? And I remember, like, we texted, and then he's like, can you send me a fax? And I was like, where do I find a fax machine? He's like, well, let's get together, and we'll talk about it. And, like, I met him with, like, his friends in a Chinese restaurant. I was there with my daughter. At that time, she must have been, like, 3. Okay. And I'm, like, having a panic attack, you know, because, like, I, like, early Misfits. Like, I love early Misfits. And I was like, hey, so would you consider doing a fundraiser? He'd be like, no, I'll give you some money. He's like, oh yeah, let's do this. Like, let's do a fundraiser. Like, and they did it. Like, in, you know, at that time it was like Des Cadena was the guitarist. Jerry was on lead vocals. And they did it in our community center, and they raised like Amazing. I think he raised like over $22,000 for the skate park. So once I had all those things in place, I know this is very long-winded. No, my application, the application for the Tony Hawk Foundation was very robust, and because I'm a teacher and I'm a nerd, I like tabbed out this huge binder with like all the community stuff we had done. But like between the early Deckaid prototype and then this Misfits show, I think they're like, what is this place and who is this woman? And we did. We got the biggest grant, and we got the highest grant, $25,000. And then all of a sudden, politicians are like, okay, let me get you some more money, and it's very expensive. Skate park buildings. Yeah, I
wanted to ask you, like, how much did it cost overall? Because I assume that 25K doesn't cover a whole skate park. Like, that's probably just a small portion of it, but.
Yeah, and I think the purpose of that grant isn't necessarily even to fund it as much as it is to show the community around it, like to give it validation, you know. Mm-hmm. I want to say it was like $202,000, but when we got the bids in, they were wildly sort of all over the place. It was a small project, so getting a skate park company in, you know, some people were just like, it's too small. So, you know, it's, and I think it's gotten more expensive. I think a lot of people were surprised. They're like, why isn't this cheaper? But the town had to go with the lowest responsible bidder, and that's who we ended up going with. But yeah, and I feel like poured concrete, I can't remember the exact number. I feel like the exact space was just over 5,000 square feet. So the actual poured concrete was probably around 4,000 square feet. But there was a lot of issues with like drainage and plantings because it's, you know, almost on sea level. So a lot of other stuff had to go into it. There were like engineers involved. But I'll just never forget, there's this guy, JR, he was a tattoo artist, and I had just started the project. And I think maybe by then we were under another 501c3, and he had just tattooed a bunch of people, and he just like hands me this like wad of cash. Mm-hmm. He's like, this is for the skate park. And then you're on the hook. Like, I got my first $200, and now I need...
yeah. Let's go get
do the math. Yeah. So...
Amazing.
Yeah. But I think after doing a project like that, I could see, like, how you can accomplish anything, really.
Yeah. Once you have a dream and a set of goals and everything. And yeah. And talking about that, like, what would you say was the most challenging part of this whole 5-year project? Like, what was maybe the hardest obstacle to get over, you know?
I mean, you would think it would be getting people on board with the project. Like, there were some naysayers, but it's so amazing because the mayor I was working with, she was like, no, the naysayers, you get them on your side because you invite them onto your table. Like, you bring them to the table. And that's exactly what I did. There was one person who was like, it was going to be right near him. It's like, I don't want to listen to this all the time. It's not that loud. You're actually not that close, but, you know, you have a son. And I was like, well, would you like to be part of our committee? Mm-hmm. And he was a lawyer. And he became part of our committee, and then he became one of the most outspoken people for the skate park. So it wasn't necessarily that. I think the hardest thing was trying to make everybody happy. I'm almost 50 now. I'm not as much of a people pleaser as I was then. You know, I think it's been like 10 years since it got completed. I feel like 10 years this year, maybe. I really wanted to make everyone happy all the time, and you can't.
Yeah.
You know, there are a lot of different stakeholders. There's the skateboarders. There's the people in the community. It was also trying to like keep straight to the vision. You know, people would be like, oh, well, let's put in some prefab. And I'm like, no, we are not going prefab. It has to be concrete. We have to make the commitment. These are all the reasons why. So I think it was like, Tim was really helpful too. And like with any big project, you sort of doubt yourself. You're like, what am I doing? Sure. Or this person's mad at me, or this person said something online, or they feel like this bank is too steep, or it's not steep enough. And you're trying to, you know, and just to have a kind friend like Tim just be like, you're doing great. Like, it's great.
Don't mind the noise. There. Just keep going.
It's okay. Just like stay focused. You know, don't doubt yourself. So sometimes it's just like believing in yourself, I think, you know, and being okay that some people are going to agree with you all the time, and that not everyone's going to be 100% happy, even with the final product. You know, you did your best and you give what you can. So that was probably the hardest part. Yeah.
Okay.
The other stuff was just time. It was just so much time, so much like sitting at meetings. The meetings were kind of exhilarating because there were so many people supporting it, but a lot of the behind the scenes, like sitting in nonprofit meetings, you know, making this meeting, that meeting, and having 2 small children. And I'm a New York City public school teacher, so having a job. And trying to do all of it, I'd get really tired. I'd get tired. But I had a great committee of people behind me, so that was really helpful. Yeah.
And so what was the time period, those 5 years? Because you said Deckaid kind of started as you were doing that. So, and I think Deckaid started in 2015, if I'm not mistaken. So
Deckaid, the prototype was 2013.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So, and we spelled it. I came up with the idea of Deckaid, but I don't know why I didn't want to put AID on it. Like I was trying to do more of a play off the 10-year timeline thing because Tim's collection really spans like the 90s mostly, early 2000s. So I was like, oh, it's kind of clever. And we spelled it Deckade, which makes it sound like a drink, like a fruity drink or something. Like enjoy this Deckaid, you know. So and we had it in it was a fencing academy, and this is like the early days of Deckaid too. We were like, what can we turn into a museum? Because people would be like, you know, you can't bring this into a gallery. All the skateboarders are going to come. It's going to be all, you know, rowdy, whatever. So we did it at a fencing academy. And we basically built like wooden walls and with 2x4s, and we had like a DJ, and we had food, and we had classical musicians covering like New Order, and then we had like a whole dance party, and like people bought tickets to get in, and so it was this whole model, and so that was the prototype. But then we went to see, and of course it's so ironic. I think it was 2014. No, 2000. What am I saying? Yeah, 2014. 2014 was the 20 Years of Chocolate show.
Oh, and, that's right.
Yeah. So after we had completed, right as we were completing the skatepark project, we went to see 20 Years of Chocolate down in Brooklyn, and we looked at the way that Andy did that, and I was like, well, this is how we should do it. We don't need.
This is what we need.
We love cellists, but we don't. It doesn't have to be all that. It doesn't need food and dancing and tickets. Like this is really cool. Maybe we just do it like this. And we raised money for another organization. I'd really fallen in love with the work of Skateistan at the time.
Oh, sure.
So we ended up actually doing it in the same exact gallery where 20 Years of Chocolate happened, because I was like, well, the gallery owner knows skateboarding. I don't have to convince him to do it again. Yeah. He was so nice. He like just gave us the keys to the gallery. He's like, have fun. I was like, wow.
Make yourself
at home. So that was
in
Williamsburg. Yeah, it was pretty cool. He passed away, which is too bad because he was pretty awesome.
Was that in New York or in LA? The 20 Years of Chocolate?
That was
Brooklyn, okay.
That was in Brooklyn. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so it started as a prototype, and then we held the New York City show in 2015. Yeah. And by then we changed the name so it didn't sound like a wine cooler.
Yeah, anymore. That's funny. I didn't know about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do this next one. This one is from Niki Williams, who also works at Deckaid. She said, she said, Sarah is a teacher by profession. I'd ask her, what's her why? And what is it that drew you to young people in general, both in terms of the mission for Deckaid and in terms of your day job?
That's a good question, Niki. Niki's awesome. Yeah, she's on our board of directors. We're really lucky to have her. I met her through the Skateistan board.
Okay.
USA board years ago. She's super talented. Yeah, I mean, I started working with teenagers when I was a teenager. Like I was working as a summer camp counselor when I was 16 for like 11-year-olds. And I just I think I was a difficult teen. And I've always been drawn to, like, I can relate to teenagers. And I just got drawn to teaching, I think, by wanting to make some kind of change in the world, seeing so much need. I sort of came out that way, seeing issues. Even as a young kid, I'd be like, what are they doing to the ozone layer? Like, I got to do something about this, like in fourth grade. Like, I just kind of came out that way. Like, there's a lot of problems. And it's probably my parents doing too. My dad's a social worker, my mom's a nurse. So.
Okay. Very dedicated to helping others. Yeah.
To helping others. Yeah. So it's sort of like in my blood. And then, I was studying education. I ended up spending 2 years in Central America, which kind of...
that's right. Where were you living again?
I was living in Costa Rica, but I did a lot of traveling. to Cuba and Panama, Honduras and Nicaragua. I spent a lot of time in Nicaragua, and just sort of like it kind of blew up my perspective of the world, like my suburban Long Island or even New York City perspective of the world, and saw even more need, but on a more like global perspective. And so from that experience, and I really learned a lot about like where people are coming from and, you know, why they come to the United States. And so I went back, I was going to be a literature teacher, but I decided to change courses and teach English as a new language and like dedicate my life to working with immigrant communities and children. So I think a couple things, like I kids need to be seen. And I think I was a teenager who needed to be seen and didn't get seen as much as I wanted to be seen in the right kinds of ways. Seeing the global need, you know, and the care for kids that we need to have. And then just also knowing that I was born into a family who could keep me safe and put me through college and let me move to Central America, and realizing that I could have been born and I could have been anybody, anywhere in the whole entire world. And, you know, that's privilege. And so, like, what do I do with that privilege, right? I have to recognize it. And then what do we do, you know? And you can't always make change in big, giant, some people do make change in big, giant, global or national levels. But if everyone just puts their foot forward and makes change for somebody a day, right? Then we're moving Absolutely. Forward. And I love working with kids. You know, teenagers are the best. They're so perceptive. They see through like all of the BS. And I don't know. Yeah, so I guess in terms of like the mission of this, you know, once I realized that Tim had this collection, and I was like, well, it's just sitting there, no one's seeing it, and we could put it to better use, and seeing that people will come and see it, and then we raised like $5,000 for Skateistan at that first show, and I was like, oh, well, let's keep going and see what happens. So believing that we can sort of like give people this experience, like this free, because Deckaid show is free, you know, people make donations at the door, but give a free artistic, you know, like cultural experience to people, while also lifting up another organization that we believe in, like their work, and then giving some kind of financial donation forward. You know, we always have to keep ourselves going. We're all volunteer based, but there's, you know, just the cost of actually doing the show is actually a lot. Oh yeah, sure. But to be able to help, you know, highlight the work of an organization whose work we believe in, that ties into the community now that wherever we are, it feels like we are pushing the needle a little bit, right? We're pushing a little bit, because you can get really overwhelmed on everything that feels like it's going wrong, right? Yeah, but it's just this one thing that you just keep sustaining and trying to move forward on the behalf of others. I think it makes real change, you know? Yeah. I feel like that was 100%. Long-winded and maybe circuitous, but yeah. So that's what it is, yeah. Okay. And I try to bring that work to my students. The skatepark project in particular taught me something about public speaking. So that drew me into, like, I actually got trained by TED to teach kids how to give presentations about ideas that they have, especially around issues of food justice and whatnot. Okay. I just feel like in education, like if we're not teaching kids how to get their ideas out there, how to express themselves like clearly, to know what they believe and to know who they are, to know what's important to them, and to know where they can make impact. If you can't express yourself to do that, you're not going to be able to influence people. So that's kind of like, that's what I try to do in the Deckaid platform, and that's kind of what I try to do in my teaching as well. Yeah. And so just to stop on a second on your job as a teacher, so you teach in New York City, and what ages, what's the profile kind of the students that you work with? So I teach English as a new language. I teach at a small public school called Special Music School. It's a school for musicians. It's really interesting, actually, because kids audition in from all over the city. And then I'm on the Department of Education side, so I teach our immigrant students who are learning English. Okay. But then all of the kids get conservatory training. So every student in the school is a musician. And I have more students over at the high school, like we're in Lincoln Center, but I have some students at the lower school. So I really teach all of the ages. But I do a lot of extra work. I help with a hydroponic farm in the high school. I do a lot of other side projects at the high school outside of my teaching. But my students are from everywhere. You know, the kids come in from everywhere. You know, music is everywhere. So I have students from Ukraine. I've had Venezuela, Japan, all over the world, and I love it. I don't know. I think I have the coolest job. Yeah.
It must be quite challenging too. I mean, I'm not a teacher, but it must be challenging, I guess, to especially teach English to someone, for example, from Japan. If you don't speak Japanese yourself, like how do you manage to do that? Like how do you accompany a child or a teenager whose primary language is you know nothing about? Like how do you deal with that?
Their home language. It really is like the first way you started to learn. It depends on what you're talking about. Like if it's talking about speaking, you can do a lot with visuals.
Sure.
Yeah. So for example, I love to teach argumentative writing, which kind of ties into like this idea I have of like if kids can't express themselves well, like what are we teaching them? So I like to do that, for example, like these murder mysteries, and it's actually a visual, and you can see this thing happen to the visual. I can't remember, the Puzzler, I think was called. Like there are these black and white images of these different murder mysteries, and you can talk to kids about like, well, what do you see? And of course they're interpreted, like it's a man fell down in the bottom of the stairs, and you can see that he's dead, and there's all these clues in the picture, and you start to label it with the kids, because they have ideas. Kids have like life experience and ideas they come with. There's just this barrier of language, so you just have to tap into that, make it interesting, and you sort of build, like it's like a Lego set, like you lay the foundation and you just sort of like grow it slowly as they can take it and just make it more sophisticated over time. But with something like reading, you really start with like basic sentence formation, but I try to do everything in context, because I feel like when I learned Spanish in college or French in high school, my French is terrible, by the way. It was the most boring classes, because they would give you these workbooks, and it was like, the things you're learning to say, you're never going to say to anybody, right?
Yeah,
and so when I moved to like Costa Rica, I was like, I can't say anything to anybody, like that, none of that. So it's really about trying to create like authentic experiences that make people want to try to talk, and then just keep encouraging them. Yeah. So, but it's fun. It's a fun challenge, and it's like instant gratification, because like with language, with things like math and other things that people teach, maybe with science, it's very, very gradual. But like I'll have kids who will be quiet for like months, and then all of a sudden they just have full on conversations with me in English, and it's like, wow, you had all that in there all that time.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, it must be wonderful to witness that progression and them coming out of their shells, kind of, and that's amazing. Okay, let's do this next one. This one's from Steve Lenardo from New Jersey Skate Shop.
Yeah.
Who's also part of the Deckaid team.
He's their treasurer.
Right, that's right. So he said, Sarah, where does all of your hard work and dedication come from, being a parent, wife, and a teacher, to helping get Nyack skatepark and passionately steer Deckaid? I need to know so I can catch this fire. Haha. Big love to you. And it is quite impressive. Best. Yeah, you have a pretty busy schedule, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, he's one to talk. He's a teacher too, and he's a dad, and runs a skate shop, and he's on the Deckaid board. So, okay, Steve. And they're constantly doing community. Yeah, they're constantly, he and Chris are always doing community give back, stuff. They're amazing. I just think I'm someone who can't sit around a lot, unfortunately. I'm actually trying to work on that, to just relax. How to just like sit there and stare off into space. Like I'm always reading a book or listening, I'm always doing something. So part of it maybe is like a strange psychological need to be overly busy all the time. So
sure.
I should try some transcendental, meditation or something. But I think also because I'm such an empath, and I take a lot in around the world, and you can get really distraught about anything. I can get distraught about anything. Like I'm definitely a natural worrier. The only thing that really has alleviated any feelings of anxiety or sadness in my life has been to give back. I don't think there's anything else that is equal to it. I think that if you're really sad or you're really struggling, and it can be really hard to get out of that, if you can give back a little bit or engage someone in an authentic way, I think this is why teaching works for me too, because I'm doing a lot of that, even though it takes a lot of energy. It can really impact you. It comes back around as energy. So I get energy from giving back. And other people give me energy too. Like Steve and Niki, they're on my board, and sometimes there's been a few times where I was like, I can't do Deckaid anymore. Like, this is insane. Like, there were a few shows that Tim and I, we hung alone. Like, we hung that Brooklyn show by ourselves.
Yeah.
Which was insane. And then we worked the show, and then we broke down the show. And then I was like, oh my God. And then I went home to my kids, and then I like went back to teaching. And I was like, I can't keep doing this. Yeah. But I also have other people around me here. I have an awesome community, and they help. Like I said, even tapping into what I said before, like help me believe in my vision. Like they've taught me to trust my vision, and they're super supportive. And I just get inspired by other people. Like I get inspired by the projects that Steve does. Like he's driving down supplies to Asheville, and when I see people like that, when I'm around people like that, it makes me excited. It makes me feel alive. And so I think that's the answer, Steve. I get my fire from him. Yeah.
Okay, let's do this one.
Hey, Sarah. So my question is a two-parter. If you haven't already, could you share the story about how you and your class interviewed Ian McKee? I just think that's a really great story, and I think people listening to this would probably find it interesting as well. And then the second part of my question is, did something like Discord Records or Ian McKee have an influence on you with the way that you wanted to approach Deckaid? Did you take that ethics or the ethos, and the do-it-yourself kind of attitude to help you kind of formulate and get Deckaid off the ground? So I just think that's kind of interesting. But thank you very much. Hope you're well. Thanks for being awesome. Bye-bye.
Was that Nick?
That's Jay Croft.
That was Jay Croft.
Yeah.
For a second I thought it was Miki Vuckovich because he and I went back. Yeah, that was Jay. Sounded a little different. Oh, yeah. Jay loves music too. I'm an advisor to a club called Music Appreciation Club at my school.
Okay.
And it's just a bunch of kids who get together and they just want to talk about music. They just want to talk about albums. We build these epic playlists. They're usually thematic, but some of it's just like, let's just put everything you like in one place.
That's amazing. I would have loved to go to something like that when I was in school.
Yeah, they keep my music listening very wide, and sometimes they surprise me. They're like, listen to this Linda Ronstadt album. She's singing in Spanish. And I was like, I would never have listened to that. But, gosh, Ian was, so it was COVID. It was COVID and our club was online and it sucked. Like teaching online during COVID sucked. Kids in New York City were traumatized because there were people dying we've forgotten this, but there was a morgue in Central Park.
Yeah.
Like students were seeing
pretty rough in New York,
this stuff, and I was like, well, how am I going to bring joy through this, like through Zoom? Like this sucks. Yeah. And I sort of like tried to channel the spirit of Nardwuar, like just ask, like just ask, because that's what I did with the skate park. Like I just asked, I was like, hey, I want to build a skate park, and they're like, oh, well, maybe. People will say no, but sometimes they'll say yes. And and through skateboarding, I have a friend named Jimmy down in DC, and I knew that he knew Ian, and I was like, well, I should try to see if Ian will come on. We had a couple huge Fugazi fans in the club. And so I asked Jimmy, and Jimmy gave me Ian's email, and I was like, this is never going to happen.
Yeah.
And seriously, that week he responded. He's like, yeah, I'll totally come on. And so, I met Ian on Zoom. I've only met him on Zoom, actually. And the kids prepared interview questions for him. And we proceeded to have like almost a 2-hour Zoom interview with all these kids stuck in their homes. And Ian.
Beautiful.
And it was so interesting because, they're all conservatory trained. So a lot of the conversation was this idea around like lowercase m music and uppercase m music, where like uppercase m music is like you have to learn, how to play your notes and tempo and read music and be trained in this way. Whereas like lowercase m music, as Ian would say, which is this thing, this sort of like raw energy that comes out and you're playing around. And he's got lots of cool stories about how he tried to take piano lessons and how he hated it. And so, we still talk to him. Like he just gave us a whole playlist of protest music because we're giving a talk on protest music in a couple weeks. So he's kind of like our club friend.
Godfather,
yeah, he's amazing. Gosh, you meet people and who you really look up to, and sometimes they don't live up to your expectations, but sometimes they're almost like even better than you expected.
Yeah.
You know
very
what I mean?
True.
It's like
very
you 100% are the person I wanted you to be, and like you're even more than that.
Yeah.
And so I think that the whole concept of DIY, you know, or this sort of like grassroots, like we can't wait around for people to make change. We can't wait for someone else to do something for you. If you want to do something, you really got to do it yourself. And everything that's done, it just comes out of somebody's brain, like you or me, like me. You know, you get these seed ideas, right? Everybody gets them. I believe that everybody gets these ideas in their mind. They're going for a run or they're driving, whatever, and they get this like, oh, what if I tried that? And they're like, nah.
Yeah.
And sometimes I like to be like, well, why don't I? Let's try to see what happens. That's how Discord Records happens, you know. It's how so many things happen. It's just people trying something out, and sometimes it's hugely successful, and sometimes it's not successful, and sometimes it's just right. I feel like that's a Deckaid. Deckaid is like just right, you know. We're not like this huge blowout organization. You know, the skate park wasn't this huge, like 10,000 square foot thing, but it's something, you
Absolutely.
know. Yeah. So I guess people coming together, putting their minds together to problem solve and make something interesting and cool, like that's the best stuff there is.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, that must have been a super cool conversation. Did you record it? Did you do something with it, or was it?
Yeah,
just
I recorded it. Yeah,
Okay.
because they're New York City students. Like I'm not allowed to share it. So it
Okay.
can only stay internal
sure.
inside of the school. But we actually we did a follow-up interview with him, and then we put it into a zine. Like we make zines.
Oh wow!
Because again, I like to show kids like how to get their ideas out there. Like you can self-publish. Like get your ideas out. Like hand them out.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Oh, they're very
like,
lucky to have you as a teacher. That's amazing.
But they're always a little weirded out by it, right? Because you know they see me working on academics, and then they're like, "Oh, and she somehow knows how to talk to Ian McKee."
Yeah.
And like Deckaid, they don't even know about what that is. You know, like everything is very like compartmentalized. Yeah. Sometimes I'll have like one skater who'll be like, what's up with you? You know, like I had a student last year and he had sort of figured me out. And then all of a sudden, like he was in a pants commercial for poets.
Oh,
and I was like, my student is like in a pants commercial for poets, and like he knew Gino. And so sometimes Gino and I like, oh, remember that kid?
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway.
Okay. This next one is from Sean Cliver. So he said, okay, Sarah, the house is on fire, and you can only save one piece of the Sanchez Terminator exhibition set. Which is it?
Gosh.
Tough question.
One piece. Knowing having all of them over here, I gotta say the robot. The robot, the painting itself, because you have to choose between Arnold. It's not the robot. It's a cyborg. He's got a name.
What is it
It's
called?
like the
T-1000 or something? No.
Yeah.
Oh, I think that was the villain in the Terminator 2 movie, actually. I don't remember.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Well, that's the one I would take. Yeah, there's that piece of art has become like sort of iconic for a decade, and it's so great that it is, because it's when Tim and I moved in together, we were living in Brooklyn. And we had this big orange living room wall. And this is when it wasn't dawning on me, like, fully what he was doing. Like, he took over one of our closets and, like, sticking skateboards in there. I'm like, you're not skating them? Like, what are you doing? We don't have a lot of closet space. But then one day, like, these huge paintings appear. I'm like, why is Arnold Schwarzenegger, like, in the living room?
Should
and they're
I be
big.
worried?
They're, like, big pieces. I'm like, what's going on here? It's like, we got some new art. And I was like, I didn't understand, like, any of it. I was like, okay, I guess we're going with this. So, but, man, what a cool concept, that sort of, like, the scratch-off board. Like, I love that. I think it's super
iconic,
neat.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still talking about it all these years later. It's, yeah.
Yeah, although I would say maybe I don't know. The other thing I would say is like the board that's not scratched off.
Oh,
that would be the other one. That probably,
I've never got a chance to see it myself in person, but yeah, I'd be stoked to see that. That's again, an iconic item of skateboarding culture.
Yeah. It's like right here somewhere in our house. I think it's in our closet.
Oh yeah, lucky you. All right. Oh yeah, this one is in two parts, I think. Let's see.
Hey Sarah, Derek Brennan here. Very honored to get to be on your episode. So one of my favorite things about Deckaid shows is the charity aspect of it. The fact that there's usually an organization you're donating to as part of the shows. And I was wondering if you have any memorable moments or experiences you can share about getting to give those donations and or seeing or hearing about the impact that they've made.
Oh, that's a good question. I love Derek. He's done some, we've been lucky that as we've grown, you know, when Deckaid had nothing, we were just like building shows off of fumes, we had artists help us out, and Derek was one of them. He's super talented. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of timely. You know, we for the girl show and the chocolate show, we partnered with Stepping Forward LA.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah,
so
you donated
Niki,
$25,000 to them, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then from the girl show, with the girl show together, I think we donated around $30,000 to them.
Yeah, amazing.
Which is the most impact we've been able to make. And Niki on our board used to be a mentor there. So what their work is they connect their support system for youth who are aging out of foster care in LA. So they help youth find housing and jobs. Most of their people they employ are former foster youth. They provide internships because foster kids sometimes don't have job experience. So they give them the job experience using an internship so they can find a job. And they're a very small, tight, well-run organization who are impacting like a lot of young people. And the interesting thing about that is when I was putting myself through graduate school, I actually worked that job. I worked with an organization here in Hempstead, Long Island, where we were supporting kids, teaching them independent living skills, because when you are 18, you age out in the States. Generally, you age out at 18. You were living in a group home or you're living with a foster parent, and they're like, bye. Like, go
Good
find
luck.
a place to live. Yeah, get a job, get a car. And the thing, is that there's so many barriers to figuring out how to do that stuff, like health insurance. So do I have to apply, for, Medicaid, or how do I get a job, or like, do I want to go to college, or how do I get my GED? There's so many barriers. How do I take the bus, to at 18 being like, go figure out your whole life. So when Niki was like, I was like, we want to find an LA-based organization. Niki introduced us to them, and we got to meet them this past summer, and we got to interview them. And everyone that was there, that was part of this organization, several of them that were former foster youth, they were just so caring and smart and passionate about what they were doing. And because they're small, like, we knew that whatever we could give them was going to make an impact. Like they're sort of like remote and they come together. So there's not like enormous giant overhead. Like a lot of the money goes not just to like employing the people who work with them, or, with the youth that they bring on, but also for the programs that they do. So, after this insane auction that just happened with the chocolate show, which was like mind blowing, we were really able to make a donation that will like really make real impact on their work. And so, and they even came, a couple, Jasmine and Pat from their organization came to the chocolate show, which was great. So it's sort of like it all came together. Sometimes we've benefited organizations who couldn't come to the show or like didn't really understand what it was. But this partnership was like, it was perfect. Yeah. They're really cool. And if you're in LA and you're actually listening to me talk about this, I would say they're looking for mentors all the time, and they're virtual. So like people can mentor youth, and just help them along with their life experience. So they're Stepping Forward LA. They're awesome.
That's amazing. I think was it them or you shared a story with some little interviews? Is that the video that you guys made, or was that something they made on their own? Or
no, we made that. Yeah,
okay,
we made that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And that's something we're trying to do now more, like, as we've been growing as an organization, trying to figure out how we want to make our impact, trying to make sure that we are also using our platform to really elevate their voices as well. So you should hopefully look forward to more of that.
Okay, I have a second one from Derek, I think. Let's see.
So over the years with Deckaid, you've put different people's board collections on display. You've curated shows with different brands. You've collaborated with a lot of different skateboard artists. And so I'm curious for you personally, who some of your favorite artists are, or maybe some of your favorite board series or favorite brands from over the years. Looking forward to hearing your response and listening to your whole episode. Thank you.
We've gotten to work with a lot of artists. We're so lucky. Like Sean was the first artist we worked with, which was when he said yes, we were so excited.
Oh yeah.
They're working with, and then getting to work with Marc, especially since he had like made that early on skate park donation when we were like nobody, just trying to, I don't know, that was really special. They've both become friends. I have to say, we just spent a lot of time working with Andy Jenkins and Carlos Gutierrez. And,
so Girl in Chocolate art directors.
Girl in Chocolate, yeah. And
current art directors.
Yes, and they're just both. We were working with them for 3 years, basically, to make both shows happen. They're just fantastic people, and everyone's got sort of their own ideas and styles and vision, and so we just had a lot of fun getting to work with them. Tim really is the person who turned me on to Heacock's art, of course, like visually stunning. But there's so much of it's hard, like Ian Johnson, Western Edition, like his artwork, also because I love music so much, I really love. But I thought about this because I knew someone was going to ask me about favorite boards, and I was like, I really gotta think about this. And so I picked out, I think, my top three. The first one would be Andy Jenkins' Edgar Allan Poe board for Gabe. He actually recently gifted us some of the art from that too, which is really nice because it's going to be in the shows. But I think Gabe early on gave us a portrait again when we were nobody. He was very generous with lending us his image with his board. So we have an early portrait of Gabe. Rest in peace. Yeah. And I'm a huge Edgar Allan Poe fan because I'm a bibliophile. Yep. And I always loved when I first saw that board at the 20 years of chocolate show, I think. And I was like, I need that board. And Tim actually bought it for me. I have a few boards that are just mine. Another one is a Nina Simone by Ian Johnson because I love Nina Simone. I actually have the artwork for that too. Tim got that for me. Wow. And then Todd Bratrid. I'm a huge Prince fan, and he did this board. It's called Chemtrails, and it's from when Prince is in Purple Rain singing Beautiful Ones, and he's like on his back, and there's like chemtrails above him. It's just so funny and clever. And I have that sticker on my car actually, and it was peeling off, and I put up a picture, and Todd saw it, and he's like, you need some new ones. And so he had a little stash of that image, and he sent it to me, so I have a fresh one in my car. So those are probably my top three. Not because they're my nostalgia necessarily for skateboarding, because I personally am not a skateboarder, but for their own reasons. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and the Terminator. I mean, obviously.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That one is in a lane of its own.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is from Bryan Ridgeway. So I believe you worked with him on the Skatistan project, which was early on, right? I think you mentioned it earlier.
Yes.
So Bryan said, with respect to you, Sarah, having a professional educator background, what would you say is so rewarding about completing Deckaid events beyond the exhibitions themselves? In essence, what mentality lends well to working on projects where you don't get to see the end result of helping other causes Deckaid raises funds to donate to?
The thing that comes to mind, I guess, would be like a Tibetan mandala. Have you ever seen that sand art?
I think so, yeah. Yeah,
the monks will get together and make this beautiful sand art, and then they let the wind take it away.
I think I saw that in the 7 Years in Tibet movie. They were doing
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it's this idea of impermanence, right?
Okay.
Like beautiful things. So we hold on to things. It's very Buddhist, right? We hold on to too much, and we have to learn to let things go.
Right.
And I think that maybe it's that, like Deckaid shows are typically not very long themselves. Mm-hmm. We're hoping to be extending them longer moving forward because it's just exhausting doing a one-day turnaround like that. And then with a charity, like you sort of make this deep connection, and then you sort of move on and go to something else. And sometimes we echo back, and we're like, hey, remember these people? We try to echo back to other nonprofits. But I think it's exactly that you sort of like do your work and then you keep going. Sometimes being too attached to a project can be problematic. I definitely felt that with the skate park sometimes, where you're sort of like gatekeeping it or holding on too much, or so you just give everything your best, and then when it's over, like we have so many connections now. I mean, that's the other thing I have to say. We have made like so many different states. We know so many different people. So we made so many friends, and so many amazing people. That were never even on our radar, maybe even initially. So I guess it's that. I guess it's like you can only bring your best to every moment, or the best that you have in that time, be it a Deckaid show or your interaction with a student. you can't control the outcome.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and so I think that answers this question.
Yeah, no, it's great. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we mentioned this guy a couple times. Let's see.
Hi, Sarah. It's Jenkins. Do you remember what my favorite candy is? Because I think you always remember Sam's, and I'm a little jealous that you didn't bring any for me last time. Also, have you met Glenn Danzig before? All right. Take care. Love you guys.
Andy's the best. I don't remember. Tim definitely remembers. I don't remember. I feel like I know what Sam's. I think Sam's is a Reese's because he eats a lot of Reese's. I think Megan's is a crunchy bar. Andy. I don't know. I can't quite remember. Yeah, that would have to be Tim. Tim is Tim loves sugar. Anyone who knows Tim knows how much he loves sugar. So
He's got a sweet tooth.
Yeah, and he'll remember everyone's favorite candy bar. I'm more of like a orange cheese powder kind of junk food girl. That's funny that he asked that about Glenn. So, I almost met Glenn but I haven't met Glenn. Once they got back together, when the band got back together, they did a show in New Jersey, and I was at the VIP party afterwards. But I think Glenn didn't go. Something had happened personally, so he wasn't there. But I was there with Jerry and Doyle, and I got to bring some friends, which was super fun. So no Glenn. Yeah, they're an interesting, fun group of people, all very different, strong male personalities. Yeah. Yeah. But they make some pretty cool punk music, or did. Yeah.
Andy actually sent me the responses. He said, if she doesn't remember the candy, it's peanut M&Ms. And if she says she's never met Danzig, she's lying.
Well, there's a funny picture. There was a funny serendipitous thing that happened one day when I was with Jerry, and I was downtown, and we were eating dinner or lunch, and we were sitting with some of his friends, and then Mark Gonzalez skated by and saw Jerry, because Jerry was in his full gear because he was going to a flag show, so he had the jacket and everything. So Mark stopped and was like, "Can you take a picture with me?"
Yep.
And then I got into the picture, so there's a picture out there of me and Jerry and Mark Gonzalez.
Wow.
And it was just so random, and I sent it to Tim, and I was like, this just happened. And he was like, what is that? Yeah, it's just, life. I've been fortunate to have some experiences that if you told 16-year-old me that was going to happen, I never would have believed you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay, let's see. Let's do this one.
Hi, Sarah. I wanted to ask how you believe that your training and experience as a school teacher has informed the way that you deal with skateboarders. And I'll take your answer off the air. Thank you.
Is that Mick?
Yes, Miki.
Okay.
Vuckovich.
Yeah, Miki Vuckovich.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of my hero a little bit. He was really helpful during the Nyacks. He used to be the executive director of Tony Hawk Foundation. Yeah, he was awesome. So what was the question again? How do I take my...
basically it was, how do you believe your training as a school teacher, how did it inform the way you deal with skateboarders?
It's kind of a funny question. I think I like to reserve my judgment until I really get a sense of a person, maybe. I think we make a lot of snap judgments on people based upon how they initially present, whether it's how they dress or how they speak or who they are, or what you've heard about them, and I try really not to do that with students. Sometimes you'll hear a teacher be like, "Oh, you're getting so and so." I'm like, I don't. It doesn't happen a lot, but it happens. And I think that, I think that I never want to underestimate someone's intelligence and life experience. So I think that has definitely helped me in interacting, with really anybody, skateboarder or not skateboarder. And the other thing I think is also that everyone's just a person.
Yeah,
I think that maybe didn't come out of teaching so much as it came from having that Chinese food with Jerry that first time, where I was just sitting next to him and he's eating Chinese food. I was like, you're just a guy. I was at that age a lot, but here we are eating Chinese food, to really realize every person, pretty much every person is entitled to dignity. I want to believe every person is entitled to dignity. Yeah. And, so, I think that would be it. Just trying to give people time to show you who they are.
Yeah.
And just give people the benefit of the doubt, more than not. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, just staying open there's a lot of personalities out there, and I have a strong personality. I know that, like, about myself. I might not be everyone's cup of tea. I'm pretty strong-willed, and I talk a lot sometimes. Yeah, so
Perfect
Marc
for a podcast.
Marc McKee and I are like perfect together. Yeah, because he's on the quieter side. I'm a little bit of a nervous talker, so you put us together. I just try to make him laugh all the time.
Yeah. Works well. Okay, this one is from Pat Conlon from Stepping Forward. Yeah, we were talking about it earlier.
Yeah.
So he asked a couple things. His first question is, we enjoyed meeting your husband and kids on our video shoot. What is the best thing about working with your husband on projects? Do you get your kids involved, or do they have other interests?
Good questions. Best part about working with Tim, I think, is that our minds work differently. I think we're both very creative in different ways. It's funny, I think Rick, somewhere on his phone, has a video of Tim and I looking at a board art wall for this last show. And just disagreeing, like both just disagreeing on something. And usually between Tim and I is the right answer sometimes. Like, like he wants everything to be like really like 100 billion boards on the wall. And I'm like, well, what story is it telling, But also we have different strengths, He's very knowledgeable about skateboarding. He's very gifted with a camera and with editing. I believe that. He's very thoughtful. Like, I've been with him on a bunch of his interviews, and he's just he's very natural and warm. And I think I'm someone who's good at connecting people and keeping things organized. And I just have different, I think, visual takes on some of our exhibitions or ideas. I like big concepts. I like to think about things conceptually. So I think between the two of us, we talk a lot about Deckaid. We talk a lot about, like, we have a project in the works, and, we just went out, to dinner, and we're talking about it and getting excited. So I think that we excite each other. Lift each other when one of us is tired, like, I can't do this anymore. The other one's like, yeah, we can. No, it's fun. It's good. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's go. And then my kids, like, they've had a funny little life. They've sort of been on this whole road that neither of them, my daughter skated for a little while.
How old are your kids
I
now?
get see her. We have a 14-year-old girl and a 17-year-old boy.
Oh, and, okay. I didn't know they were. Okay, I thought they were smaller than that. Okay.
They were. They still. I mean, in the
Not
very
anymore.
beginning, they were. They've been there for a lot of the shows. Like, my daughter was working the door at the Ohio show.
Oh, wow.
I think somewhere there's like a little VHS tape. She took like an interview. We have to find it, of John Lucero. They've met all kinds. Like the first Gino interview, she was running around in the background. This is before Gino had kids. At the White Building. She was like in the background. You don't see her. So they've sort of been there all along. And I think that. Especially my son right now is seeing what it is. Like, he's really seeing it. He does a lot of volunteer work himself. And so his teachers have even told us, oh, we've heard that you do a nonprofit that helps people here and here. And so he's recognizing it, I think, for what it is now. He grew up in it, but sometimes when you're growing up in something, you can't stand back and see it. Yeah. So yeah, they have been involved. Sometimes Sage, my son, has done. He's helped with a couple interviews, like doing sound, like with Rudy and stuff like that. So we try to get them involved where we can. Yeah.
And are they interested in skateboarding at all, or not really?
My daughter probably is more. Yeah, she was actually really interested in it for a while, and especially when we were in Nyack, and it's cooled off a little bit. She said she wanted to start again. My son was just like, yeah, I don't want to fall. I mean, I can't blame him. I don't want to fall either. He did it for a while, and he was like, it really hurts. So you have to, I think it takes a certain kind of person to be like, okay, I'm just going to fall, and it's really going to hurt, and I'm going to get up again. I'm going to do it again. You know
have
what
to
I
be
mean?
okay with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. He does that more with like his writing. Like he does that, but for something else. So
I see. Yeah. Not quite literally falling. Yeah. Different kind of.
Yeah. Okay. And tenacity. Yeah. Focused on something different, but I think that's what skateboarding really is. It's like it's a real demonstration of tenacity and creativity. Yeah.
Okay, this next one from Pat is, he said, the event with chocolate was amazing and inspiring. The energy that night was electric and the exhibit was beautiful. What was the most rewarding and challenging moment of this past event and exhibit with chocolate?
Gosh, that's a good question.
And so that for the listeners, that happened in December, right? Or was it in January? I don't remember.
It was in December. Yeah, it was in December. I think the initial challenge, I mean, they're amazing. We love them. We are so fortunate that they tapped us for this. they have such an immense collection. They've held on to so much. So part of the challenge was like, okay, what do we choose? And then what can't we put in? Because there's only so much space, right? There's so much in their archives. And they're so generous with it. And they also don't hold it as too
precious or
too precious. Yeah, they want it out in the world. They want people to see it. They want you to touch it. They're very, very cool about it. I think there's that, and it was also like, how were we going to make it distinct from the girl show? Because the girl show was in the same space. It was going to be in LA.
And it was a year before, right?
It was a year before. Yeah, so it was trying to conceptualize it differently. And I think we really succeeded in that. I felt really good about that show. But it was initially like, how are we going to make it have a very different feel? So, and I think another challenge was doing, if anyone's seen pictures of the exhibit, was the forever wall. Because when you're talking about loss and you want to give space to the people that you loved and you lost, you have to do it in such a way that feels personal but classy too. Right?
Respectful
respectful. Sure. And our Michelle Box, who's on our board, she's like a seamstress. She makes like ballerina costumes and stuff. She did this beautiful job sewing in these marigolds into the table. It just and so between her and Megan and myself, I think we were able to really pull it together in a very classy and special way. But that was probably the part of the exhibit I think that made me the most nervous, because it was also interactive. Yeah.
And so Pat's last question is, we love your passion, creativity, and kindness. What motivates you to do this work?
Yeah, just motivates me to do the work. And I think I need to try to make some impact in some way, with what I've been given, whatever natural talents I've been given, or whatever skateboard collection I married into. Just how can we move the needle in our own way?
Okay, let's do this next one.
Hey there, Beyond Boards. This is Nick from Strange Love Skateboards. And thank you for doing this podcast with my pal Sarah about Deckaid and the great work that whole team does. I had quite a few questions I was going to throw out there. A couple jokes, couple comments about Morrissey and Prince.
I knew it.
But I'm going to keep it somewhat serious, and I'd love to know, my favorite part of doing installations is turning on new people and young kids to the amazing output from illustrators in the world of skateboarding. So I was wondering, do you have a favorite moment where, in watching the crowd, you saw the light bulb go off or the hook go in someone's mouth of just, again, the amazing output that... amazing images that are on the bottom of skateboards. Love to hear it. Thanks, guys.
Oh, Nick is great. He didn't go with the Morrissey question. We talk a lot about music and argue about Morrissey. Honestly, at almost every show, after we've built it, and you sort of we stand back first, right? And we're in an empty space and we're like, whoa, wow, we're tired, but we built it because we built it ourselves. And then when we sort of like watch the crowd kind of come in, and I tend to like to be there sort of quiet and looking at people sometimes. I mean, I talk to a lot of people, but sometimes I stand back and just watch people. And you can really, very often you'll just see someone be like, or even I'll see it on Instagram later, like, I haven't seen this board since I was a kid. Like, I had this board when I was 14 years old. And these are all the memories. So like, I think that people who are not new to it come in and it sort of taps into different nostalgia, taps into childhood, perhaps. The forming of who they are now, even in a lot of ways, right? Yeah. And then I think for people who don't skate, who come through, they didn't even know it existed, right? And there's such a diversity of art and so much talent. And the way, like, Tim loves the giant board wall. And it's just like, it's true. Like, we had 5 rows up at this last chocolate show, so many boards, and you just look at it and you're just like, so much art and time and talent went into this whole wall. And you see people come through and they're like, I didn't even like realize that this was like a thing, right? And you start to put together, and Tim and I talk about it a lot, that skateboarding isn't just skateboard. Like, skateboarding ties into art and ties into music.
That's what's so interesting.
That's what makes it so unique. I can't think of anything else that's so like tied into that level of creativity. That it's inherent in the thing itself. So
No, I love this question, and that when I was listening to it the first time, it just reminded me of my like every skater, I guess, when you first get into a skate shop and you see boards on the wall and you smell the smells of new clothes and shoes, and you see a skate video on a TV or something. That first experience and interaction with skateboarding is very, very special, and it's like engraved into your memory forever. And and it's it must be special to see even for you guys, when you, as you just mentioned, like when you see people come into the exhibition that you've been working really hard on, and you really see like the emotion that it brings up, or like the nostalgia and everything. It must be really heartwarming, like really a really nice feeling, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I love seeing, it's fun because Mike Carroll will come through with his daughter.
Oh yeah,
how cool is that, right?
Yeah.
Like when skateboarders come and they have their boards on the wall and they're showing their children, And sometimes the kids have they don't even really know. Like they don't even, they've grown up with this parent.
Their dad,
and you're like, your parent's a legend. And that's my dad.
Yeah.
But look, all these people are like so excited about this board and him. And they might even see their like parent, this person they knew, in this whole different way.
Okay. This one is from Erik Swisher.
Eric's the best.
Oh yeah. He's one of my. I mean, for me, his interviews are the best, and then Tim is right up there with him, but Erik is like the GOAT.
Yeah, they have good chemistry together, those two.
Yeah. I'd love to. Hopefully, we'll meet all in person one day. Yeah, that would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
So, anyways, Erik asked, "What are Tim's telltale signs that he is nervous and/or geeking out in an interview situation?" What is the goofiest thing he's done on a shoot that he's beat himself up over later? And have these Bobshirt / Deckaid adventures possibly introduced a different side of Tim to you?
Good question. Well, let me think about that one. I would say, so for the first Gino interview, that was right in the beginning when we were there and our daughter was running around. We had gone to take a portrait. But he was like, I'm going to bring a shoe.
Yes, I heard about
that. And I was like, why?
Seriously?
Like, how long are we going to... And I don't think it was warm. I'm like, how long are we going to keep him in this, like, parking lot? And he's like, I'm not just going to bring a shoe. I think I'm going to bring some boards. And he's like, just trust me. And it sort of kind of, like, grew out of that. So, I don't even remember if he was nervous for that one. His telltale signs, I don't think you actually see. And the thing that I learned that's new about him is when he goes to do it, he just turns on, right? Like he's very natural at it and warming people up. And but we both are like thinkers, right? And like we both like to be very prepared.
Yeah.
So the telltale would not happen at the interview itself, but in the preparation, because he's such a perfectionist. And in terms of regrets, sometimes he brings too much stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
And he'll be like, oh, I didn't put this, I didn't do this board, or like I totally wanted to ask that question, or like it's gone too long, and he's like, oh, and you can see like the person's like, okay, I got to get out of here.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but I think that the thing, he's very good at coming up with questions off the cuff too. Like he's very prepared with a list of questions, but following up is not easy. Following up on a question, you can have a very flat interview, that's just like you're just going with the questions. And he can warm up people. He can warm up people that maybe are really nervous. I think the unique thing about his interviews is, it's like right now, like I was nervous to come do this. Yeah. And then they're on camera, right? And then they're talking about themselves, and not everybody wants to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Or they might be talking a part about their life that maybe was hard or not easy or something happened. But giving them something to hold on to, there's something in that, just to hold on to the thing itself. Like, so that, talk about this, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something reassuring about it. So he's very good at warming up all different kinds of personalities. And he's a warm, kind, he's very genuine. And I think that people who might be reluctant to talk trust him over the course of the interview if maybe they don't know him that well. So yeah, but the nervousness, as soon as that camera's rolling, it goes away. It's all leading up. All leading up.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It's anticipation.
Yeah, that's the worst part. But then once you get rolling, as you said, you get more comfortable, and for sure.
Yeah.
But I assume, because as you know, like we're doing a Zoom call right now, which we have our cameras on, but I only use the audio. So I think I hope it's a little easier also for my guests, because they know that I'm not going to use the video footage of this.
Yeah.
Whereas with
Yeah,
Tim, it's
I think
filmed.
so.
So if I were to do an interview of that nature, being filmed, I would be a lot more stressed out for sure. I'd be like, oh my God, like I'm going to look terrible. What should I wear? Like, how am I going to look? It becomes a whole thing, Whereas if it's just your voice, it's like, oh, whatever, it's fine. It's easier. So his format is a
he's
bit more
notoriously
challenging.
Himself off camera, you can't, getting a picture of him is very hard. He himself,
Oh, yeah?
he doesn't like to be in the hot seat.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't think I could go on camera for a Bobshirt interview.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we could. You could, I could probably, but we would definitely be stressing out about it beforehand.
Totally, yeah.
I have another one from Erik. He said, I imagine someone has already asked who your favorite skater and or board graphic is. But who/what is something in skating that Tim loves but doesn't quite resonate with you for whatever reason? Best to you and Tim. Love you guys.
Ugly shoes. Yeah, he's got a shoe collection.
Yeah.
A small shoe collection. And he's like, this shoe is amazing. And I'm like, that thing is horrible. I don't know. It's like other stuff though. Like, it's funny because I think he has all the Big Brother magazines. He's got the videos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But like, I grew up around that too, though. Like I was around, people who love Big Brother, and I'd be like, what the hell is this? Like, what? So, it resonates. That stuff, even though I'm like, okay, that's super crazy. It resonates to me. I have some nostalgia around that myself, but yeah, probably some like bad fashion that he wore that he thinks is amazing. Yeah, that's what I would say. In terms of boards, like, it's hard you look at them differently. Like, I think they're different for people who skated them and watched them coming out, and it defines that period. Then maybe it is for me. Like I'm looking at it. It impacts me differently. Maybe from more of an artistic standpoint. So I sort
more
of
the visual.
Hold my reservations around the art itself. Although sometimes there's art, I'm like, oh, that is not making women look good. That stuff is hard for me. Yeah. That stuff is hard. But generally, it's all interesting. It's all the period of time. I'm sure if you looked at my outfits from the raver stage that Erik pointed out, we'd all be horrified. Yeah.
All right, this one is from Jesse Geboy. I'm not sure how to say
Geboy.
Geboy, yeah. Who's part of the Deckaid install team, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So he said, Sarah, in preparation for Deckaid Chicago, I had consulted with Tim to help make some selections for boards to bring. Oh, that actually ties to what we were talking about earlier. His response was, bring whatever you want. I needed a bit more direction than that. So I called him and he again said, whatever you think. Okay, thanks for your input. So ultimately, I picked out whatever I thought was funny, as that's always been the focus of my collection. What that also meant is that I curated a heap of lewd, offensive, and perverted board graphics to represent the show. In retrospect, this was a bit of a misstep, considering Deckaid was fundraising for a youth organization.
Yeah.
I've carried a bit of embarrassment and guilt about this, as I certainly wouldn't want to taint your respectable brand with such filth. How badly did you cringe seeing some of the distasteful boards I was putting up, and why did you not reel me in and veto some of these absurd selections? Thank you for being so incredible to me over the years and for forgiving me for this breach of etiquette.
Jesse's so great. Yeah. Also funniest person. Yeah, I think that was something that we sort of like realized over time, as we were becoming a nonprofit. Like before we started off, we weren't a nonprofit, so sort of anything could go. Mm-hmm. As long as it, didn't rub anyone too much the wrong way. What could that be? I don't know. We could talk about that, but I think once we became a 501c3. And in our mission statement, it is to support organizations who are benefiting youth. As a teacher, I was like, oh, wait a second, like we have to be really thoughtful. And we're also, we're open to everyone. We're not like 21 and up too. So people do bring their kids through. Some art is just ridiculous. Like, I mean, come on. But I also get the funniness of it, right?
Yeah, sure.
Like the Garbage Pail Kids ones, like those are totally lewd and like hysterical, right? That's one thing. But there are other boards that actually were commentary against racism and things like that need context And I think that unless you can give it context in words, or you can explain it, it really shouldn't be there necessarily now without it. Right? Because I think that even some of those artists would say the same thing. Like, there's context to what this is saying, right? You can't take it at face value. I'm sure Nick knows exactly what I'm talking about. Jesse knows what I'm talking about. Like, some of it is actually making commentary. So we have to be careful because we have, like, potential donors coming through, kids coming through. And it's like, you don't want to censor anything necessarily because that doesn't feel right. But we have to. I mean, it's like just, it's curating. You know,
it's
like
difficult balance. Yeah, I'm sure.
It's a difficult balance, but Jesse was a good sport, and I try to, I think Tim and I are like, we try to get in what you can get in, and some things you're just like, there's just no way. Like,
Yeah.
There are some boards. I think there's a couple 1-on-1 boards. I'm like, yeah, there's just no way, for our nonprofit, because you never know. Something goes up on an Instagram, and someone's like, oh, look what they had, and then they flag us, and it could be a whole thing. Yeah.
Sure. He asked another thing. He said, for those that do not know of your spouse's royal heritage, would you share with the audience Bobshirt's real name?
Oh my God. Yeah. His name
If you want, you don't have to.
Yeah. It's okay. His name is William Granville Anderson II.
Oh,
and,
wow.
I think his dad is a fifth. And pretty much many of the males on my side are also Williams. Like, my dad is a William. My godfather's a William. His dad is a William. So I was kind of happy that he went by Tim. I was like, and we named our son Sage. Yeah. But I was like, wait, I thought your name was Tim. He's like, no. But he also comes from a tradition where, like, his dad is named William, but he got called Andy for a long time. So, like, everyone was William, but then they got another name. So it was sort of like a family tradition thing, too.
I see. Yeah.
It's very Massachusetts or Boston to me. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. He's from there. Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
Cool.
I love that.
Well, speaking of the devil, I have a question from Tim, of course. All right, let's check it out.
Hello, Sarah. So we've been doing Deckaid for over 10 years now, thanks to you. It is your brainchild. I want to know what, in that 10 years, what has changed and what has stayed the same for Deckaid? Also, do you have a favorite artist collaboration that we've done for Deckaid? Alrighty, thanks for everything. Bye.
What has changed and what stayed the same is, I guess, the idea that we're doing something that's not necessarily benefiting us personally. Like, it does, in the sense that we're meeting people and we're connecting and we feel like we're doing something good.
But you're not getting
still 100% volunteer
yeah.
run. Like, our overhead is either going directly to the show, directly to the cost of having a 501c3, or it's going to another organization.
Mm-hmm.
God, what's changed? I mean, listen, Tim and I funded this whole thing out of our own pockets for many years. So we didn't no one knew who we were. We were just sort of doing it, to see what would happen. Mm-hmm. So now I feel like our vision is clearer. We now, thanks especially to the Crail family, have some funding that has changed things for us and what we will be capable of doing for the show and on behalf of others. I think that our shows have become more dynamic. Like, especially, I think our learning curve is very steep with Girl and Chocolate because there are so many, there are video elements and there's so much ephemera. Like, that I think our shows were very much just sort of very two-dimensional, like the board and art. Now we're bringing a lot more to the table with our future shows. So I'm really excited to see what we can accomplish now.
Yeah, what the next steps will be, yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. And in terms of favorite artist collaboration.
It's difficult, yeah.
I mean, the first one we worked with Sean Cliver to sort of reissue. That was a reissue of the Keenan art that was really special.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Aranovich did a really cool aesthetics video game poster with us, and he's great. He's a real perfectionist with his work, and that comes out really cool. I maybe I had a thing about Bill Murray for a while. Like, I just really thought he was the funniest. And so when we did the Chicago show, we asked Marc McKee to do a piece with us that featured Bill Murray and the Bulls and Jesse Newhouse. So that I really liked. It's fun when you can We have something funny in the works too right now, but I can't say what it is. But it's fun when you get an artist, and they're all so talented, right? And they're like, get on board with your like funny vision, and then you see it executed, and then it's on a board, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. One more thing I will say though is we did do sort of like an in-between project with Daniel Seawalker when we did something for Stronghold Society. Okay. And she is an indigenous artist from Standing Rock, and her piece was super powerful. And we did sort of a capsule, and that benefited the Stronghold Society. And that was just I wasn't a skateboarding artist. It was just she's a very powerful artist. And for it to go back to the community, I know some of the boards, I think, also went to Standing Rock. We made some for the kids, too, and went to Pine Ridge. So that was a very meaningful collaboration, too.
Wow. Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah.
And I agree with what you said about Bill Murray, of course. He's the best. Absolute best.
Yeah, he's the best.
Okay. I have just a few last ones.
Okay.
All right. Let's see.
First, I would want to say thank you so much to Sarah and Tim and Deckaid for everything they did for us and with us for the celebration of 30 years of Girl and 30 years of Chocolate. So incredible. And my question would be, how many photos is too many photos to let you know still need to be framed about 72 hours before the show? Excited to hear the answer.
I love
so I assume you recognize who that was.
Yeah, she's really awesome and special. Yeah, Megan, I don't know, maybe 2 of each rider. Maybe we don't need 2 of each rider. But we've learned to pull off anything. I mean, I think we learned it from them, how to just pull it off in the end and just do it. Yeah, Megan. We did it, though. We did it twice, and we did it 2 very different ways when we managed, and no one freaked out. But the thing I loved about that is that they were so concerned that everyone felt represented and that their whole family was there. That was really important to them. Like, hey, we got to make sure that all of our riders are there, and then that this friend who did so much for us is represented. They're always trying to shine a light on everybody else. They certainly shined a light on us. So Megan, we're so grateful for them. Like, we're forever friends now.
Okay. Oh yeah, you just mentioned this guy, I think. Let's see.
Hello, this is Alex Aranovich calling in from Pasadena, California. And my question for Sarah is, hi Sarah. My question for you is, when did you discover you had an affinity for foreign languages? Actually, this is a 2-parter. The second part is, what is your favorite thing about being an ESL teacher? All right. Hope your interview is going great, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
I don't think I knew I had an affinity for language until I had to move somewhere where I thought I knew the language and that I didn't understand the language. And then I spent a lot of time. I'm a pretty outgoing person, and I try to make people laugh and be funny, but like I was just not translating. Like my humor was like, I'd get out with a bunch of kids like in college, and like I would try to be there. I was like, I'm not gonna hang out with like all the Americanos. Like I'm not gonna be with the gringos. Like I'm gonna go hang out with a bunch of ticos and ticas, and I'm gonna just like immerse myself. And then I'd be like, look, I'm saying this funny thing, and everyone would just be looking at me. I'm like, it's not funny. And then they would say things that they thought were funny, and I'd be like, that is just not funny to me. My language wasn't nuanced enough, like I just having to learn by fire. But I think the moment that I really felt like I had an affinity for it is, I think anyone who's learned a second language and has had to really use it in the world, like you start to dream in it. And I haven't dreamt in Spanish in a while, but I would start dreaming in Spanish, or I'd be dreaming partially in Spanish and partially in English. And then when I moved back to the States, there were things you couldn't express the same. Like I learned expressions in Costa Rica that didn't translate, or in Nicaragua that didn't translate here, that were sort of like, it's not just language, but your culture and your like morals and values and humor are embedded into that phrase that seems so simple, but it's so much more than that. So I think just like the levels of culture and that are embedded in language are super fascinating to me.
For sure.
Yeah, and my best job, it's not ESL anymore, Alex. It's now called English as a New Language. Like I have had students who speak 7 languages. Like I had a student from Kazakhstan who spoke 7 languages.
Oh, wow.
That's always wild to me. Yeah, 7. He spoke 7 languages. just because he lived in a cross section of the world, like when you have students who live on these like places that border other countries, like people are like, oh yeah, I speak 4 languages, 5 languages. Like a lot of my Ukrainian students speak, they speak English, Russian, and Ukrainian. I think that the best thing about it is, first, I don't think anyone should teach what I teach unless they've had to live in another country and they know what it feels like to be othered. I think that that's really important. I think, I understand everyone does it for the right reason, but I think that until you know what it feels like for people to not understand you or to not know your way around or to feel like you don't understand the system, like that you have to navigate, that maybe you should have that experience before you work with immigrant students. But I gotta say, I get to have such a closeness with them, when I really sort of watch who they are unfolds, who they are unfolds without language necessarily initially, like especially if they don't speak Spanish. And getting trust, and then finding humor, like, oh, that's your sense of humor. Like, I love humor. Like, humor is the gateway to so many things. I mean, humor is like the best. So once we can like joke around or we both see something that's funny, like even if the kid isn't too proficient, but something funny happens and like we see each other. I love those moments because they just sort of like shoots right past language and like, it like sort of dials right into the human experience. It gives us a universality of like who we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, let's do the very last one.
Okay.
Hi, Sarah. It's Kevin from the Look Back Library. I am curious as to what your dream venue and a board collector partner would be for a future Deckaid exhibit. And what can you tell us about 2025 Deckaid exhibits?
I thought that would be a good way to wrap this up.
That's a good way, yeah. Well, I would say my ideal location would be at a museum where it can stay up. I think seeing the Girl in Chocolate Show stay up for a week to be able to build it and walk away, or even we had a small part in the Recording the Ride video at MoMI.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And you sort of like, and we actually didn't, they curated that. We just, we did some curation of the boards, but they built it, but it's still there right now. To be able to walk away is real, like you really get to walk away. I think that's, especially if we can use a museum space, not just to like highlight this history, whatever chunk of skateboarding that we want to highlight, but to also highlight somebody else, like a partner organization, and that stays there too. I would just love to see it stay up safely and in the right kind of venue
setting,
where people can have not just have to fly in all the time to come see it right away just on that weekend. Dream collections, I mean, there's still people out there who are just personal collectors that we would love to work with. Like, I know we would love to come to Paris. We talked about coming to Paris. It's just trying to figure out. There's so much logistics. Like, shipping art is like the world's most difficult and expensive thing. It is unbelievably difficult. And then leaving the country in customs, but we would like to get out of the country and work internationally.
Please do it. I would, of course, I would love it if you came here. That would be a dream, for sure.
Yeah, we'd love to do that. But 2025, we have something in the works. I can't say a lot about it. But I can say that it is in North Carolina, and that we are working with Josh at Black Sheep and some other fantastic people who I'm not going to name yet.
Okay.
But we're looking at fall. Our shows take a very long time. People were like, you should come here and pop up. I was like, oh no, it takes us like at least a year to curate these things.
And you have all your other, your jobs, your children. It's not like...
That's the thing. When it's volunteer run, you're not... So this we do in whatever free time we can find.
Yeah.
So, but we do have something really exciting in the works. So I'm excited to share it when it's ready to be announced. Yeah. And a really cool nonprofit that we're going to work with too. So...
Sick, I look forward to hearing more about it. Cool.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Let's wrap it up here. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Okay, thank you too. Keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome, and you're really easy to talk to.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's it for my conversation with Sarah. Follow her on Instagram at Deckaid. That's DECKAID. Visit their website deckaid.org, where you can give a donation to support their amazing work and keep an eye out for their upcoming projects. Thank you for tuning in. See you soon for a new episode of Beyond Boards.